Module 9.4, Absolute or Perfect Pitch and Pitch Standards. You may know someone, or you may be someone, who can hear a note and automatically name that note. The ability to correctly identify the pitch of a sound without an external reference is called absolute pitch. It is commonly referred to as perfect pitch. A very small percentage, less than 1/100th of 1% of the U.S. population, has absolute pitch. Many studies have been done to try and figure out why some people have it and why others don't. Early research looked to see if the ability was genetic, but no real evidence linking absolute pitch to genetics was found. Two circumstances do tend to give a person a strong chance to have absolute pitch. If you grew up speaking a tonal language, one where inflection affects the meaning of a word, then you have a better chance of having absolute pitch. For example, in Chinese, the word ma has at least 6 different meanings depending on inflection. Most dialects of Chinese or Vietnamese depend heavily on pitch variation across single words for meaning. More people from those cultures have absolute pitch than people from other cultures, so it is something that is learned at a young age. If you begin musical training at a young age, you are also more likely to have absolute pitch. Both of my children started Suzuki violin lessons after kindergarten. At the beginning of every class, the teacher, Mrs. Butler, would play the note A and have the students tune their A strings. Mrs. Butler spent a lot of time at each class having the students listen to the sound of their instruments to see if they could get the strings correctly in tune. I remember one day, after about 3 years of lessons, the students were unpacking their violins, and Mrs. Butler said, "Children, would you please sing an A?" All 8 children sang the A, and it was the correct pitch. My son has since changed to the string bass and is usually able to identify a pitch when played in isolation. For more information on absolute pitch, see the websites listed in the text version of this module. Pitch standards. Have you ever heard the term A440? That refers to the standard frequency, 440 Hz, for the note A4. The standard frequency for pitches has changed through the years. In 1619, the German composer Michael Praetorius suggested that the note A be set at 424 Hz. The composer George Friedrich Handel had a tuning fork that vibrated at 422.5 Hz, and there's evidence that that was the frequency used by Bach, Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven in the mid-17 to 1800s. In the mid-1800s, A's on various church organs ranged from 374 to 567 Hz. Imagine being a traveling musician and finding out that your instrument had to be tuned very differently depending on what church you were performing at. In fact, it may have been impossible to play in tune with an organ. Pitch began to rise starting in the 1800s, probably because brass instruments were being used more frequently, and raising the pitch made them sound more brilliant. In 1859, the French government, always happy to make decrees, decided that 435 Hz would be the standard for A. In early 1900, a scientific pitch was proposed, making C a power of 2, 128, 256, 512, 1024 Hz, etc., which made A about 426 Hz. Medical supply houses still use this for their tuning forks. Dr. Bott has a set of medical tuning forks. See if you can find out what his A is tuned to. As you can imagine, all of these different frequencies for A presented serious issues for musicians. This was all about to get better. In 1939, an international committee decided on A440 as a standard. And that was the end of that. or so you would think. Over the last 20 years, the frequency for A has been gradually rising due to the whims of many orchestras and instrument makers. You see, as pitch rises, sound gets more brilliant, and perception of a brighter sound creates interest and excitement in the listener. In the mid-1900s and early 2000s, orchestras were dependent on income from recording. So, if raising the pitch in a barely detectable way, as 440 to 442 Hz is an increase of 0.45% right at the pitch J and D threshold, your recording of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony might be a little bit more exciting than your competitors, and perhaps people would buy your recording rather than theirs. The same goes for musical instruments. Now, 442 Hz is very common as a standard pitch. Some organizations are even using 444 Hz. Here we go again. For more information on A440 and pitch standards, see the websites listed in the text version of this module. To review, absolute or perfect pitch is the ability to correctly identify the pitch of a sound without an external reference. Factors that increase the likelihood of having absolute pitch are growing up speaking a tonal language or beginning musical training at a young age. A440 is the standard frequency, 440 Hz, for the note A4. Modern orchestras and instrument makers have been raising the pitch above 440 Hz due to the belief that higher frequencies are more brilliant and therefore more interesting to listen to.